Welcome to the 33rd Annual California Small Farm Conference. I'm thrilled to be here. As I was mentioning earlier, for those of you just joining us, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself in chat, where you're from, maybe your organization you're with, that'd be great. This is our first year doing this virtual and free and a la carte, so things are going smoothly so far, and we're glad you're here with us. The conference is this year hosted by CAF again. We've been around for 40 years supporting small family farmers through both policy and programming. And today the workshop is getting started with CSA. So hopefully you're in the right place. And this workshop is actually co-hosted by both CAF and UC Cerda, Sustainable Ag Research and Education Program. So I want to start by just doing some logistics. I want to thank a huge thanks to our panelists, whom I will introduce in a moment. And then also, we had some great sponsors this year who made this event possible because it was free. So I invite you to learn more about them. I'm actually going to plunk in the chat our expo hall that highlights them. And if you want to go ahead and give them a look later, we really appreciate their support. So let's see. I encourage folks to utilize the chat feature for just kind of chatter, but if you have specific questions for the panelists, please use the Q&A box, and then we can monitor that a little bit better. And today we have 3 panelists, and then I'm going to share some exciting rules and regulations of CSA with you all for a very brief minute. And so this will go until 12:15 to give us time at the end for that Q&A. And then finally, we will be sending out a follow-up email, and all these will be recorded and available on our YouTube channel. So keep your eyes peeled for that. So without further ado, the Getting Started with CSA workshop. Today we are highlighting the aggregation model because we really saw a spike in that model, whether you call it aggregated CSA or farm boxes or multi-farm CSA, whatever you call it. The idea of combining product to fulfill demand is a really successful model that exploded during the pandemic that we really expect to see continue. So, and it's been an especially successful model among small farmers with less volume and or socially disadvantaged farmers. And so, as we all know, one's ability to participate in a market or market shifts depend greatly on your resources or your language skills or your access to land or financing, etc. And so the aggregation seems to be a strategy that, through collaboration, really ease that market entry. And we want to lift up today this great example of that and highlight the Sister Farm Project. So today we're going to have Willow Blish from Slow Food East Bay, who organized this aggregated model. We have Melanie Lidman from O2AA Farm, and she's going to get real and talk about some of the challenges. And then we have Aaron de la Cerda from Acta and Verba, and he experienced impressive expansion of his CSA. So he's going to share a little bit about that. So I think with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Willow.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here, for being curious about this. So my role, I'm the chapter leader for Slow Food East Bay, and I'm pretty sure that probably everyone on here knows what slow food is, but we're the local chapter of the global movement of slow food, dedicated to good, clean, and fair food for all. And most of our work, really all of our work has always been consumer centric. We really see ourselves as an education organization or a movement to educate consumers about where their food comes from, to encourage them to make better choices, advocate for people in the good food industry. But when COVID, when COVID happened and all the shutdowns began to happen, we just started to look around. We were trying to figure out how we might be able to help. There was a lot of things going on. We were trying to see where the holes were. And we had just come off of a year-long series of events that we called the Cultural Food Traditions Project, where we were celebrating and featuring chefs from immigrant and refugee backgrounds, talking about the ways in which migration have helped to develop our food system, both from a standpoint of logistics and the way in which food is grown and harvested and distributed, but also from a pure deliciousness factor, because with slow food, we do feature good as well as clean and fair. So we had just come off of running, I think it was 10 dinners in 12 months. And so when everything started to shut down and people were kind of frantically trying to figure out where food was going and coming from, our focus immediately went to immigrant and refugee communities, because that's where we had been. So we really wanted to see what was going on in some of these communities and how they were faring in particular. So I started reaching out to, I reached out to CAF, and through CAF was connected to the Asian Business Institute and Resource Center in Fresno, and Carmen Mendoza, who is, I think she's not the ED. Oh, I'm having a bit of I can't remember exactly Carmen's role. I know Kang from ABERC is on here, so maybe he can help us. And then at the same time, we were also seeing, because we are an urban facing chapter, we were seeing local urban farms and CSAs immediately being sold out. Everybody wanted their food delivered. So all these farms that had planned for their normal, 20 or 30 shares throughout the summer, they'd already planted, all of a sudden were just inundated with requests. So we just started cold calling, thinking, okay, there's all this excess food in the fields and we know people locally need food. So how can we create some sort of urban rural connection? And really over the course of 3 weeks, we essentially formed a nonprofit distribution company, trying to help bring food in from rural communities, specifically working with Hmong farmers outside of Fresno and the Latinx community in the Central Coast. And then we connected locally. We reached out to a number of different CSAs and small urban farms and connected with Melanie at O2AA and Aaron and Kelly at Acta on Verba. And both of them were so amazing. They were just so excited to both have extra food brought in so that they could increase the sizes of the CSA boxes that they were selling. And also to support some of these farmers. The farmers that we were really targeting, we were trying to find really farmers and farming communities that might more often fall through the safety nets, that because of language barriers or cultural barriers or lack of technology, they couldn't do that kind of quick change to either their own CSA or a consumer-centered model. And they were really left in a lurch. So once we kind of had some connections on the farming side and had some connections on the urban side, we started writing for grants, looking for money. We got some money from Slow Food USA. We got some money from SF Foundation, and then started a GoFundMe from there, GoFundMe charity, because we are a 501c3. And the idea behind the fundraising was that we wanted to cover distribution and transport. And I think this will come up later on as we talk about challenges in any sort of aggregated model. It's who pays for transport, when the food, how does the food get from the farm to some sort of central area, and then from that central area out to the customers. It is incredibly labor intensive and incredibly financially intensive. So we said, look, we'll raise money. We will guarantee for 6 months that we will pay for all transport. And for 6 months, we will use our volunteer labor to do all of the logistics. So we were the ones that compiled inventory lists that would come from the various farmers. We would send that out to accounts. And then we would bring in orders and send those back to the farmers. And then we also did all of the invoicing. So we kind of handled all the back end paperwork from there. As it started going, I mean, it started from these kind of us being very naive and trying to figure out what to do, to we grew. I think we started, I wanted to make sure I had the dates correctly. Our first deliveries happened on Wednesday, April 29th. And again, like talking about 6 months, so I should backtrack a little bit. So there are two things that I think I forgot to say. As we started making all these phone calls and making connections and kind of getting word out there, we were incredibly lucky to have Whole Foods approach us and offer us money. So instead of having to actually write for another grant, we literally just got a phone call saying that they wanted to give us a big chunk of cash. And that was huge. I mean, it really was the thing that kind of tipped us over to knowing that we could really do this. And the 6-month date, it feels very arbitrary now that we're, a year plus in to all of this. But at that point, I think we all thought, oh, in 6 months, this is probably going to be over, or we're going to be on an upswing and we won't be needed anymore. So we had really thought, okay, in that 6 months, we'll at least kind of carry people through, because we, again, when I talk about what we do and what we see our role in the food system, we don't really see it as a producer. Like, although we want to help producers and help bring them to consumers, we really, normally everything we're doing is focusing on the eaters and really trying to get the eaters more engaged. So this idea of being on the other end of things was very new to us. So we were learning as we were going. One last little piece to it, kind of the third piece that we were seeing, and I know we all were seeing it, was so much food insecurity and the need for food. So the last piece of this is that we raised enough money so that each week, both Erin and Melanie could donate boxes into their communities to families in need or organizations in need. We really felt like we wanted to do all of those things. We wanted to help the farmers by getting cash in their pockets really soon. We wanted to help local CSAs up their production, and we wanted to make sure that food was getting into the community. In terms of, let me know what I'm doing on time, Michelle, if I start to go too long. So in going back again, kind of to the timing, the 6-month mark, by about 3.5 months in, our team kind of looked at each other and we were like, okay, there's no way in 6 months that this is going to be anywhere close to over. But we also know that we are an all volunteer team and we'd only raised a certain amount of money, that we couldn't necessarily carry this long term. So we started to explore different options for what might happen next. We even talked to Project Equity, which is an organization in Oakland that helps businesses transition into employee owned or worker owned, because we had kind of had this idea of this becoming a farmer owned aggregation system. And I know that Feed Sonoma has gone in that route as well. But what we ended up moving toward is Cecilia Lara, who is Josefina's sister. She had started working with us based out of, I think she lives in Danville, but her family and her community is based out of Salinas and Hollister. She had started doing all of the aggregation there for us and was doing all the transport. So she, in the meantime, had started thinking about creating a business out of this. So 6 months in, we started to transition the ownership of it over to her. So we started, she started taking over more and more of the logistics that we were doing. And where really at that point, we ran into some of those questions and some of the challenges around transport and distribution. Because when you're a nonprofit and you can spend all the time in the world kind of helping people bring things together, it didn't matter to us because we weren't charging for our time. But once you try and make this a business that actually can support itself and support other people, the cost of delivery and cost of transport, both the gas and the mileage, but also the time, really becomes a sticking point. And it was something that became kind of a big stumbling block for us as we were helping with the transition. And obviously the ongoingness of COVID and the shutdowns didn't help at all. I mean, certainly if business had been able to pick up and a lot of business had come in, we could have figured out how to transition some of the cost of delivery onto the organizations that were buying, because they were then going to be able to sell more and make more money. But it was something that definitely we we stuck on. So I know that I'm kind of running up on time, and there's a lot more that I could talk about, but I will kind of leave it at that and welcome questions, I think, at the end. And I just want to check, Melanie and Aaron, did I miss anything really big that I should have talked about? Just make sure I got everything. So I do want to say that in 27 weeks of the program, we got $47,000 directly to the farmers in 27 weeks. We donated almost $8,000 worth of produce in the donated boxes. And we paid 2 delivery drivers that had otherwise been out of work. They were paid nearly $12,000 for their time. So we do feel like there was some impact there. So thanks so much.
That's great, Willow. Thank you. That is great. Melanie, do you, like Willow said, did she miss anything? And do you want to talk about some of the challenges and struggles that you had?
Yeah, so my name is Melanie Lidman. I manage the agricultural initiatives at O2AA, which is an eco-industrial yard in West Oakland. The industrial yard has been around for 22 years. The farm initiative is a little bit newer. The purpose of the yard is there's 35 different tenants, and it's attempting to be a closed loop waste ecosystem, which means that all of the waste that's created on site, we try to keep it on site. So all of the different tenants try to create partnerships among themselves to utilize the waste on site. For example, there's a Japanese restaurant that makes soba noodles, and the buckwheat husks that are the leftover from the soba noodles are used by a tailor on site to make meditation pillows. So those are the kind of partnerships that we're trying to create on site. So there's a bunch of different agricultural initiatives to use all of the organic waste, and there's a sawmill on site, so we kind of take up all the sawdust, and we have 32 raised beds. We also have a starts program. We sell affordable organic starts to the community. And we also have a cut flower program. So we, before the pandemic, the farm was growing specialty Asian vegetables for some Japanese restaurants in the Bay Area. And I was only hired as a farm assistant 2 weeks before the pandemic started. And I'll never forget, I think it was March 16th or 17th, right after the shelter in place came around, where we just stood in our raised beds, which were full of food. All of our restaurant orders had been canceled, and we were like, what are we going to do with all this food? And so my manager, Eitan Mizrahi, suggested that we do a small CSA for the members on site, and just to get us through the month of the pandemic, which is what we thought, to just to get us through this month, and then we would resume our restaurant orders. The name that I work with is O2AA. I'll put the website in the chat. And so basically we started this very small CSA the first week of the pandemic. It was basically just open to people that we already knew. And then we realized that there was a huge desire in Oakland for CSAs, and people were, anything that they could get where they didn't have to go to the supermarket, they were thrilled about. And we very quickly realized that there was no way that we would be able to grow enough food. At that point, we only had 20 raised beds. We would be able to grow enough food for to have a sustaining CSA. And just about that time, we connected with Willow, and it was exactly what we needed, which was some way to supplement the vegetables that we could grow. We end up growing, we have about 7 items in our CSA. We grow 3 to 4 per week, and then we supplement with vegetables that we purchase through sister farms. And it really answered a whole lot of our needs, because we wanted to make sure that we weren't supporting the big farms, but we were supporting the small farms, like Willow said, the ones that are always kind of getting overlooked, especially the ones who are monolingual. And what we really found is that because we were in an urban environment, we had so many opportunities to connect with people. We had so many customers that wanted our product, but we didn't have enough product. And what was so great is that suddenly we were connecting with farmers who had so much product and then had no customers to give it to. And it just really felt like all of these pieces were kind of coming together. And, we didn't buy a ton of vegetables on our own. We bought approximately $200 worth of supplemental vegetables a week, which is not really going to support any farmer. But it did feel like that we were part of kind of a shift in the way that aggregation was happening, and the way that the food supply chain was going through, because it suddenly we were part of this new story of connecting farmers directly to customers. And we were we were a small part of the story that Willow was creating. There's a lot of other similar initiatives that have started in the past year. And it really felt like here is a silver lining that can come out of the pandemic, which is a more just way for farmers to get a healthy living wage for their produce, to make sure that they're getting paid what they need to get paid, and that we're getting the food to people that need it in urban areas. We offer our CSA on a sliding scale from $20 to $30 per week. As with many sliding scales, it works out exactly that we average $25 a share, which is what we kind of need. And we, as Willow mentioned, it was really wonderful to be able to offer a third of our shares as donation to various organizations within the NorCal Resilience Network. So it has been quite challenging. I do want to call out, I saw Keng is on the chat, and it was really wonderful to work with all those farmers. I learned so much about different vegetables. Ong choy, if you have a chance to eat ong choy, it's Chinese water spinach. It's absolutely fantastic. And I think, especially because we were able to work with farmers from different backgrounds, we were able to offer really interesting vegetables. And that was kind of our niche, was like, that's also part of a CSA, is that you offer different types of vegetables and you challenge people to cook different types of things and to open their horizons in their kitchen. Yeah, I saw there's a question in the chat. Do you have resources you can share for helping to recruit CSA members? This was a huge challenge for us, and I do want to take a moment and talk about the challenges of running a CSA. It's an enormous amount of time in administration, marketing, invoicing, all these things that I had never done before. I was hired as a farm assistant, and within 2 weeks on the start of the pandemic had to end up running the farm and learn to run a CSA. It's very challenging. And I unfortunately discovered too late, there's a lot of resources out there that can help you kind of make this shift. And I think Michelle is going to share those resources afterwards. Yeah, they're already in there. So yeah, I think that's it.
Thanks, Melanie, especially those challenges. Thanks for sharing those. That's very helpful. So let's move into Aaron. Aaron, thanks for joining us. I'm glad you made it. And can you share a little bit about just the insane expansion that you experienced in the cooperation, et cetera, from this relationship?
Yeah, thanks for having me. And I apologize, I was a little late to the table. As you can see behind me, I'm picking up some fruit from one of the farmers we partnered with, J&J Ramos Farms. We pick up from them out here in the Alameda Farmers Market for our Wednesday CSA. But yeah, I feel really fortunate for everything amidst the chaos of that was 2020 and that we're still kind of going through today, that the Sister Farms project was kind of born out of this. Really thankful that Slow Foodies Bay reached out when they did. It was really cool and very encouraging to know that, like, while we work in our little bubbles kind of in our communities, there's other organizations doing things that we didn't really stop to look up and think about, whether it was happenstance or not. So yeah, just want to say shout out to Slow Foodies Bay and the Sister Farms project. Like, it's been really, really dope. AMV has been very sorry, some people walking by. I'm gonna put this back on, so I apologize. I'll speak as well clearly as I can. So we were very successful, I will say. Our CSA is still operating with, so early 2020, before, we knew about, the whole pandemic, the extent of the pandemic and what it would bring. Our CSA for Acta on Verba was operating at about 8 to 12 families per week. And that was pretty average throughout the year. And that's not including all the produce that we were donating, just directly into our community, because people kind of came and it was a little more like a la carte, that you can come and just pick whatever they would like. But as far as paying CSA customers, we were only 8 to 12. And then with the onset of the pandemic and the stay-at-home orders, we saw our numbers tick up to 30, 35, and that just wiped, as Melanie mentioned, it just kind of takes everything you have. And so we were sitting with 3 empty farms and, wondering what we're going to do. But just in time, Willow contacted us with this idea, and it sounded great, and it came out at the perfect time. So after that partnership, we were able to increase our capacity, or to maintain our capacity at about 30 to 45 shares a week, which is really dope, because little side note, 100% of the proceeds from our CSA goes into the educational savings accounts for the kids who we work with. So it was really dope to see that while we're able to help, we're just helping community at every step along the way. The farmers who have the food that need to reach a market, we have a market with no food, and then so the farmers are getting help, the families are getting food, and these young people out in East Oakland are getting, the funds for their savings accounts. So that was all really cool. But we went from the 12 to about the 30, 45, donating about 15 to 20 shares a week into the community. And then about, that was like late May, maybe June, Fat Beats had contacted us about them wanting to kind of sunset the organization, but the Beatbox CSA was still a very viable program. And so they wanted to make sure that, and they had a really large community supporting it. So they wanted it to find a new home with an organization that can, that whose ideals and whose goals aligned with theirs, what their mission was. And so AMV ended up, we put in we submitted our RFP, and we, after about a month long of talks and just making sure that the program was going to be a good fit, and not only for, so that Fat Beats felt good about passing it on, but knowing that A&V can, execute this program and do it in a way that was sustainable. So after about 2 months of talks, we took the Beatbox CSA under the A&V umbrella officially on August 24th of 2020. And so we saw our customer base go from 20 to about nearing 500. And so that was really cool, because we continued to purchase through it with the Aberg farmers through the Sister Farms projects. And Fat Beast had already had ongoing partnerships with Vang Farm, Avalos Organics, J&J Ramos, who's, this is who I'm picking up from today. And so it kind of came with this built-in network to add to the existing, the network that we were already bringing, thanks to the Sister Farms projects. So so we were pretty fortunate that connection was made between this Slow Food East Bay to AMV to Fat Beats and taking on the Beatbox CSA. It really helped us, launch into, what we are now. And now we're at we saw a bit of a dip in customers, because we made some changes to ensure the program was sustainable. I do have to pause and say, when we took on the Beatbox from Fat Beats, Chicago, Bennett, and Roya Visconti were the 2 individuals keeping it going. And they were super dope in just keeping it going. They volunteered, I believe, for like 3 months. It was just straight volunteering while they were trying to find a new home for the Beatbox. So they just volunteered their time. 2 days a week was distribution, but now that I'm managing this, I could see how much time went behind the scenes. But just through their volunteer work, they were able to, source the produce, bring it in, pack it, distribute it. Yeah, so it was a great success, and we're still going. There have been a little adjustments along the way, and we have hit one big speed bump that we hit, or I guess a bit of a roadblock that we're still trying to figure out is I know we used to purchase a lot from Aberg, the farmers there, but just the logistics of behind that got really tough with Ye Organics being the one to deliver. So that was a challenge we ran into. And so we've paused ordering with the Aberg farmers, but definitely wanting to find ways to reconnect. And the last thing I'll say is I'm since trying to launch a CSA in Fresno, where I'm from, to make sure we can continue to support those farms. But I think I'll leave it there. I know I've said a lot.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. That's great. That's great to hear about Fresno too. It's definitely needed there. And so it sounds like, there's definitely some challenges with operating the CSA model. Administrative delivery was another one. But it's great that through that kind of collaborative effort that y'all are still going and growing. And yeah, so thanks for sharing your story there. It's all of you.
Can I just add one quick thing is I think one thing that made this program with Sister Farms really wonderful is that there was this 6-month period that was very clear where they financially supported it. And then we knew that really helped us get off the ground. We could not have done it without their volunteer work, without their grant writing. As Willow said, there's just a lot of logistical challenges, and you really need that, like that cushion that they provided at the beginning was really so wonderful and so needed. And then also for us to know that after 6 months, we're going to have to stand on our own, and we're going to need to find a way to make this financially sustainable without them, really gave us the, and gave Ceci and gave the other people involved in this program kind of an impetus to figure out how we can make this sustainable, how we can ensure that these vegetables keep coming to these neighborhoods. And so I really just want to commend Slow Food East Bay for getting this program off the ground, and then for ensuring that we were going to find a way to make it sustainable and make it work. So thanks a lot. I also have some photos, but I forgot to share them. I can share them more.
Yeah, if you want to do a quick screen share, you can do that.
Sure. So this is our a picture of our Csa Pickup. Holding up. We use these black bins, and we have people come and pick up their vegetables in their own bags, and we found that this was the best way to cut down on waste, especially because right now we started with boxes, but people wanted to return the boxes, and because of COVID, we couldn't accept the boxes in return. So we just have each person comes, they have their own black bin, they put all of their vegetables in the from the black bin into their bag, and then they leave. Or sometimes they have more creative things than bags. This is kind of this shows kind of some of our sample CSA boxes. And as we mentioned, we grow about half of the items and we purchase about half of the items. We also get volunteers from time to time. This is a starts program. We sell starts for about $4 a start, and we donate for every start that we sell. We also donate one to a community or a community garden. And we also provide some herbs and vegetables for on-site businesses. This is June's Pizza. They use a lot of our basil. And this is me with a cauliflower and some of our raised beds on the south side. So basically we have 32 raised beds now, and they're kind of scattered around the property in the places where we can get the most sunshine. But it's basically we're farming on concrete. So it's quite difficult to try, and there's no way that we could possibly make this work growing all of our own vegetables. This is my coworker Mia, who is also does cut flowers. That's it. Those are just a little taste of our farm in West Oakland.
Love it. Thank you. Great. So as we're transitioning, thank you all, you guys. That was really helpful. And we're going to get to the questions. A lot of questions came in the chat. Before I move on to the rules and regulations, we were going to launch a poll. Willow, did you have something to say real quick before we launch the poll?
I just wanted to answer one of the questions and mention something else, but I can also wait till you want to go into full question mode. That's fine.
Yeah, we're still great on time. We still have a solid 20 minutes at the end for Q&A. So why don't we hold that real quick? And then Evan, go ahead and you can launch that poll if you'd like, and I will get queued up for the other stuff. All right, off mute, good to go. So there are some rules and regs that are oftentimes overlooked with the CSA model. And so I just wanted to spend a little bit of time going through those. You know, in California anyways, I know we have some out-of-staters here, but in California, you are required to register annually to sell through a CSA, and it's a $75 annual fee. And I did the link at the bottom, cdfa.ca.gov is where you would do that. And so if you are a multi-farm CSA, you would register separately, and you would include the folks that you are including product of in your box. You would include them on your certificate. Similar to like if you're selling at a farmer's market, the people you're selling for, you need to include them on your producer certificate. It's similar. And so this form is super basic, but if you are both doing your own CSA and supplying another CSA, you can just click both boxes of that. And then, you know, it's $25 to edit a current registration if you are adding other folks to your kind of your product mix. There are some labeling requirements as well. Let me get rid of this thing. You know, basic name and address on the box, name and address of the farm. There are requirements too in terms of like sharing what products are in your box, where those are from, so your origin, whether that's electronic or a printed, that's supposed to happen. And then just maintenance of those records of everything that's ever gone into your boxes. There should be some type of a trail. I believe that's for food safety. If there's ever a recall, you would have information on that. And then it's not prescriptive, but there are like food safety, again, guidance that you need to maintain boxes that prevent contamination, whether that be a box liner or sanitizing reusable boxes or new boxes, whatever that looks like. That just has to be kind of in folks' minds. And then if you are including, you know, shell eggs or meat, there's also different registrations and fees and processing and handling that goes along with that too. So CDFA has all the guidance on that for direct marketing laws, depending on what you're selling. And then just good agricultural practices. When you register to be a CSA, there is kind of a little signature and a acceptance of following good agricultural practices. I'm not going to go through all these, but here are the 5 main categories that one needs to take into consideration. And if you do need guidance, CAP has a food safety program. We're happy to help folks. I included the link to a lot of the resources on our webpage if you want to take a look at that. So I think I'm gonna pause there. I'm also seeing some questions come through. So that was kind of like the rules and regs section that I wanted to share with y'all. I'm going to stop showing my screen here and we can get into any question. I'm gonna attempt to stop showing my screen and then we can start fielding some questions. And I think Evan is going to be leading us through that.
Hey everybody, so I'm Evan Widman with the Community Alliance of Family Farmers. We're going to go through a couple of these questions, and looks like we have quite a lot of good questions here. So one of the questions was to clarify if one farm is running a multi-farm CSA, but the other farms are just selling to the one CSA, do they also have to need to fill out the CSA registration, or just the one farm running it has to list the other farms? How does that work?
So you would both need to register and pay that $75 fee. However, you would mark things differently. If you're operating your own, you just would click the box. It'll make more sense when you actually see that form. You just click the box of I'm operating my own CSA, and then the other would have to include your name on their registration. So to answer your question simply, yes, you both have to register.
Another question was, at these CSAs, is there a sliding scale payment system?
I can answer that question because we do use a sliding scale payment system. We started our CSA offering the CSA at $20 a week because we really wanted to bring fresh vegetables at an affordable price to West Oakland. And then we found that there was it's very difficult to break even with the CSA anyways. And at $20, there was just no way that we were going to do it. But we really didn't want to raise our prices because we knew that there were some people that were getting the vegetables that we couldn't offer, that just couldn't pay more than that. And we wanted to make sure that they continued to get the vegetables. So what we did was we offered a sliding scale payment, and there's a ton of different e-commerce solutions that you can use as a CSA farm. It really depends if you're adding meat or if you're offering add-ons or anything like that. There's a lot of, somebody dropped the link in for the CSA Innovation Network. I can also recommend there's different Facebook groups if you want to get started running a CSA. Someone named Karina Bench has a lot of resources and a lot of information on what e-commerce could be good for you. We happen to use Square. That's just how we got set up. And with Square, I have found a way to offer a sliding scale payment. So we offer $20, $25, and $30 boxes. And as I said, it basically works out that we were able to kind of raise our prices to $25 a box while ensuring that people that can pay more paid more, and people that couldn't pay more continued to get what they were able to get.
Great. And looks like, oh, Will, you want to jump in there?
I was just going to kind of mention about prices. Somebody else had asked about pricing and prices. And I think that's where, like, when we first set up this program, we asked the farmers just to tell us what they wanted for their vegetables. And we just presented it that way. Like, there were no real questions. Like, we wanted them to get what they thought their produce was worth. And I think that's a really important role of whether it's slow food or other education or advocacy groups, to make sure that those that can afford more are paying more. And I know that that's like a much broader question and a much broader, but I think that we need to be making things affordable enough that the food insecure can get in on it, but it also means that that needs to be supplemented by people who can pay more, who have the ability. And so really trying to do education around the true cost of food. So
I think also Ceci mentioned once that, like, if they go with a larger distributor, they're getting something like 35 cents for a bunch of carrots. And that was just shocking to me because I mean, I know how much work it goes into growing a bunch of carrots, and that's insane. And so, yeah, I think the sliding scale does enable us to make sure that we're still paying the farmers a good rate for the food that they're growing, while ensuring that people can continue to get the food that they need.
Mm-hmm. Another question was about packaging. Is it okay to use paper bags? Are there labeling required for permits if customers are picking up pre-ordered bags at the farm? How does that work?
Should I answer? Aaron, do you want to jump in if you want to at any time? But so One thing that actually made a huge difference for our CSA is I started offering seasonal memberships. In the beginning, we were offering monthly memberships, and it was a ton of administrative work. Every few weeks, I was just recruiting more members. So when we started offering seasonal memberships, that's a 3-month membership. We do offer like a 1-month trial membership, but we started getting a real core group of members, and we have a 90% retention rate from season to season, which is pretty high. And we do so the question was, so they order every week. They know that they're ordering every week. If they can't make it a week, they'll tell me in advance. We have a pickup window on Fridays from 2 to 4 p.m. If they can't make it during that pickup window, they'll be in touch and we'll try to figure something else out. And like I said, they come, there's a black box, which is sanitized, every week before we distribute, we sanitize the boxes. They come, they have their bag, they pick which box they want. Some people really like to choose, which box they're feel called to. And then they put everything in their bag, and I check them off, and then they go home. Aaron may want to jump in because he has a much larger operation. We hover around about 30 members.
Sure thing. Yeah, sorry, I was struggling to unmute myself before you started, but yeah. So we used I really like. First, I gotta say, Melanie, I really like that black bin idea. If I had the place to store that many, like I would, or to wash them. But we use the paper bag packaging. We double bag some paper bags, and it's one-time use, which is not our favorite model. We started off with, when we inherited the beatbox, they were using plastic bags, and that was due to concerns for health reasons, with not really understanding the coronavirus all that well at that time. We were not wanting to reuse bags, or take any health risks for people. And that was a big concern from the community of supporters. So we were using plastic bags, but we definitely did not like that. So we switched over to what should have been reusable totes. The goal was to find capacity to wash and reuse these totes, but that just didn't work out either. So we were kind of just gifting totes constantly, the cloth bags, to our customers. We have since begun accepting them back now that we know more about surface safety. We haven't started circulating them yet, but customers do bring those back in so we can reuse them in the future. But so we've since just pretty stable. We've been able to have a supply of paper bags. Like I said, just double bagging those and sending those out. Some customers do come with their own bags and ask if they can transfer it, which is perfectly fine. We just throw some gloves on and we transfer it into their bag. So that's becoming more of a popular option, which I'm a big fan of, due to its sustainability. But I think that's a big kind of thorn in my side, is having to put out these brown bags each week. One, because of the waste, but two, because that's just another cost that it seems kind of unnecessary. So we are looking for a manageable way to reuse things, but right as it stands, it's just we don't have the capacity to wash or properly sanitize all of the cloth bags that are being returned. So kind of still troubleshooting that one. But I should mention, we do a distribution twice a week on Wednesdays and Saturdays. We pack everything in the mornings those days, and our team does it. And then we set them out on tables. So customers, they're able to come in, they just tell us their last name, and we point them to the table they should pick a bag up from. So it's no contact, everybody's at distance. And yeah, that's kind of how we've been operating.
Great, thanks, Aaron. Another question that's come up, and I think this is a question for a lot of CSAs, is there's a lot of different varieties of payment systems. I think the traditional CSA has always been, you go back to the original concept of the CSA is the idea of giving upfront capital to the farmer at the beginning of the season, right? You pay into the share, and then over the course of the season, you get a share of the harvest. But nowadays, what I'm seeing is increasingly more weekly or monthly payment options where you really just sort of pay as you go. Probably has a lot to do with consumer expectations and competition from produce schemes where you just order online and you can customize your box and all of that stuff. So I'm curious to hear from the panelists here Do you have your members pay ahead or lump sum at the beginning?
I can jump into that because there is also a question about the consumer telling us if sliding scale works for what sliding scale works for them. And we, because we're in a neighborhood of Oakland that has just people of all different varying income levels, we kind of let people tell us what works for them. Using Square enables us to say, you can either pay up front. If you can pay up front for the whole season, great. That's a lot less work for us. We appreciate that. If you can't pay up front for the season, that's fine. I can set up a reoccurring invoice for you. And you can also tell me, we'll have some people that say, I get paid on the 5th. Can you set this up for the invoice to come after that? And we're happy to do that. And we really, and the pay-as-you-go model is very difficult. I would really recommend against it. That's actually called a California model. And it's an incredible amount of time for you as the farmer to kind of maintain billing and keep on track of who's paid what. So I would really recommend against that pay-as-you-go model. It maybe that works better for your farm. That's also fine. But in terms of either paying upfront, we appreciate when people can do that. We realize it's not possible. And so we do enable people to just kind of tell us what works for them. And because we have only 30 members, many of whom I know personally because I've been seeing them every Friday for months now, it's easy to kind of maintain that personal connection. I think when you get to the size of Aaron's CSA, that's not possible. So it's probably different for him.
So there's another question here that I think is really pertinent to a lot of CSA farmers. And I think it's something that probably a lot of farmers keeps them awake at night, which is, have you ever had a week where your available produce felt less than the CSA value due to issues with vegetable growth, or maybe there's a pest or a frost or whatever? Obviously, you want to keep your members happy and satisfied and stoked about the box that they're getting. But sometimes it's tough. And so I'm wondering how do you guys deal with expectations and the reality of farming?
I can speak to that one. Being that so I managed the farm as well as the CSA, and back in early about this time last year, before we had the partnership, I had mentioned that we kind of wiped our farms out just with that first wave of people kind of, I don't want to, for lack of a better word, panic buying. Everybody wanted the food to come directly to them. And so it was a big concern. So we saw that problem. We have a really good relationship with our customers, and at that size, especially like Melanie mentioned, having the 30 customers and knowing them personally. That's how it was when I had my 8 to 15. So reaching out to them, letting them know like, hey, so our farms are completely gone, like they're out. I can give you some salad greens in about 2 weeks. Other than that, there's not much. So I think it's just having clear communication with your customer and being really transparent about how your operation works, what's available, and not never do we pretend that we're this huge model where we're gonna feed Oakland all alone. And I think as long as we were honest and open with our customers, and we provide a lot of pictures using the social media and whatnot. So people understood, I feel that, well, if the bag's feeling a little light at the moment, or, you paid, but there's not a bag available for you, there was a lot of understanding and working with us because they knew that, we're going to keep growing. It's what we do. And so, it would come back to them, because they invested in us. So we're giving them a return in a way. So I think just communication and being very clear with what our mission is really has helped customers understand, like, well, the bag's light or there's no bag today, but that's okay because I know it'll be here.
Yeah, which is really different, Aaron, which is different than that California model where it's like buy a box as you go and it's very consumer centric, right? As opposed to that community, which was the ethos of CSA to begin with, right? So that's just interesting.
And kind of following up on that, there was a question here about diversity of crop in the CSA box. One person's asking, what's the minimum type of crops in a CSA box for each size of bags and boxes? Right. Certainly, it's a common complaint among CSA consumers is, how much kale can I possibly eat, right? Week after week. So I'm wondering, how do you, what's sort of your limit and what's your goal when it comes to diversity of crops per box?
So our box has 7 items, around 7 items per week. And we try to include one hardy leaf, like a kale or a collard, for cooking. We'll try to include an herb. We try to include kind of a specialty or unique, I call it our spotlight vegetable, which is kind of a unique or different vegetable, but I'll include a little bit of history about and some suggested recipes in our weekly email. We send out a weekly email on Thursdays before. In an ideal world, it would come out earlier in the week, but sometimes we don't know until Thursday what's going in our Friday box. And I would say definitely crop planning to ensure a diversity of crops in the succession is a huge challenge. And that does take, I think, probably a few years to get right. And there's a lot of resources about that I wish I had known about earlier on. But yeah, I mean, there are definite times, I think, before the, right around the election, I had to send out an email that said radish recount because we just didn't have enough radishes for that week's box. And like, there was nothing I could do. It was 11 a.m. on a Friday and you just didn't have enough radishes. And I think that you'll find that the people that sign up for CSAs, they're really making an effort to do this. They want to know where their vegetables come from, and they're willing to work with you. And they thought that was funny that we didn't have enough radishes. Sometimes you just don't have enough radishes, and there's nothing you can do about it. And I have been seeing in the Facebook groups now for the CSA, a lot of farmers in Texas have been totally devastated and are saying, I'm not going to have CSA boxes for 4 weeks. What do I tell my customers? And the thing is, that's what a CSA is your customers is making an investment in you for good or for ill. And part of farming is losing your entire crop in a freak snowstorm that costs money. And that's what CSA members do, is they bear the brunt of that with you and they support you through that difficult time. And I really think our CSA members have been really wonderful, and they are, unfortunately, because of COVID, we're not able to give them tours of our farm. But in a happier world where that's possible, that's a huge part of running a successful CSA is fostering this connection with your customers and helping them feel. A lot of farms will do kind of work days where their CSA members will come and harvest, and that really creates this connection with the farm, and that's a really important thing to foster.
There's also a lot of questions in the chat about EBT, so I wanted to bring that one up to the forefront, Evan. In the past, we've helped farmers get authorized to accept EBT or SNAP, some folks call it. And the Ecology Center is a great resource to also do that. Can you guys talk a little bit? Do you accept EBT for your CSA shares, or how do you deal with kind of low income access?
So we do accept EBT for the beef box. We've had some trouble in the past with just the logistics of actually processing the payment, but we've got it down, and we offer through the Ecology Center, we're able to offer discounted rates for the EBT customers. So whereas like one of our full shares may cost about our full share is $40, and it's around 10 items. If you're paying with EBT SNAP, you'll get it for $20. And then we also have our add-ons like nuts, honey, and olive oil, all cold foods, which they're also able to pay with using EBT. And we've received one of those little POS machines, so we're able to process it that way if they come in and pay. And then they provide these little paper vouchers, so you can call the customer, because a lot of customers still prefer no contact delivery or pickup. And so we'll call them, get their info, fill out the voucher, and then we call the voucher in at a set time and date. And kind of process them in batches, and then the Ecology Center reimburses us for the difference. So that way we're able to provide food at a reasonable cost to people who may not otherwise be able to access it.
Great, thanks for fielding that.
There was quite a number of different questions about crop planning resources. Obviously, it's one of the the bigger challenges for any CSA farmers is maintaining consistent and diverse supply of crops, right? And so I posted in the chat, you guys will see Acta, a partner of ours, has a whole document with a number of different crop planning resources. There's a number of good books out there as well. If any of the panelists have recommendations for crop planning resources, let us know. Also, for those of you who are on the chat, maybe you have some resources that you know about, post it in the chat. It sounds like a lot of folks are curious about crop planning resources. So panelists.
We have a very, very small farm, so I don't know if our crop planning is really relevant for larger farms. But I would say that for us, knowing that we had this aggregation model was a huge safety net for us. So we had a lot of this is my first season farming in California. I had no idea what to expect in the wintertime, and it was slower than I anticipated. And so knowing that no matter what, we would be able to fill a box with our supplemental vegetables. It really took a lot of the stress out of it. And so I would really recommend for first-time farmers doing a CSA to consider aggregation until you kind of get the hang of it, because that's definitely kind of the key to a successful CSA farm is successful crop planning.
Mm-hmm.
And all that I would add is I think it's really important to work with the farmers around you, being that we do have 3 farms, was it 1/8 an acre, quarter acre. So it's not none of them are huge, and all of our planting is focused around just, culturally relevant crops. So what does the community want to eat? That's what we're going to grow, and that's kind of it kind of takes a lot of the work out of for me as far as how to plan what to grow, because we just go around asking, we keep track of what does the community ask for, in the past season, and then we reach out and ask, like, what is it that you want to see? So because we have so many contact points with the kids in the neighborhood, it's usually like, what are some of your favorite dishes? What are in that? What's an ingredient in those dishes? And then kind of picking it apart that way, and so we can understand how can we contribute to some of their favorite meals. So that's one way we've done it in the past. But I think looking forward, we've been in discussions with a few different groups, or in a group with a few different farmers and organizations about how can we work together to crop plan, so that way we're not all growing, like mustard greens or kale, because as someone said, you can only handle so much kale. Even though we're from California, it's like we don't live off of kale. So I think that's something I'm really looking forward to moving to, like, kind of fleshing out a little more. Is just working with other farmers around us, because right now our East Oakland farm is really diverse. So we're not producing any one thing in bulk, but we do have our West Oakland farm where we're pumping out a lot of salad greens, so a lot of different brassicas and arugula, because it has such a quick turnaround. So how can we work with other farmers around us to know what's already growing and what they may need from us to fill in that gap.
I would also just
go for it.
I just wanted to give a plug as an eater, not as a farmer, not as a business person, but as an eater, like another plug for the aggregation or the collaboration model. Although it is more time and energy, it takes a lot more time and energy. That I want people, I want a wider variety of things that are really specific, whether it's culturally relevant or, I don't want every farm to just be a diversified farm. You don't want every farm to be a monoculture either, but that different, depending on where you're buying from and where you're growing, like it's nice to know that there's going to be a wider variety out there. So I just wanted to give a plug as a consumer.
Yeah, I think one thing that I've learned through this is that urban farms are not very good for production. They're great for education. They're great for connecting people with their vegetables, but they are not good for production. And so we really need, we had our beds dedicated to Brussels sprouts, and that was not a good use of our space. We really need to buy Brussels sprouts. And so I would suggest that I think one of the things that we've learned from COVID is the importance of these networks, is the importance of these partnerships. And if you're in a rural area, reach out to, you know, your urban farmers and see if you can create this CSA model together, because we have customers in urban areas who are desperate for stuff like this. And you have the land, or you might have the land to grow, you know, plenty of these difficult crops. I mean, do you know how much space we need in our small urban farm to grow enough cauliflowers for 1 week of a CSA? I mean, it's never going to work. So we need you, and we need these kinds of partnerships. And yeah, so reach out.
I just think that's so fascinating that, you know, the idea of these urban rural farm partnerships, because, you know, like you say, it's when you're out in the boondocks, in a rural community, it's a lot harder to gain access to those markets, to those people, to build that sort of social capital that you could in the middle of a city where you have access to, you know, thousands, if not millions of people. And so shifting to that side of marketing and consumers, and there's been a couple of questions around how do you market to find new members? How do you bring new people into the fold? And obviously we had a big surge in membership last year as a result of the pandemic, but as things go back to some semblance of normal, farmers are going to have to, CSA farmers in particular, are going to have to do a better job of keeping that momentum going. So any tips on membership recruitment?
We have found most of our people through community listservs, actually. I found that Instagram hasn't been super useful for us, just because you're looking to kind of tap into different communities. And so, like, I hooked up with this women's group in West Oakland, and they were our core subscribers for the beginning of the CSA. Then there's a group in the Bay Area called SF Chalkboard, which is for communal homes. And so I found that kind of tapping into different communities and having someone introduce you to the community and making it work that way is a lot more useful than kind of one-off on Facebook, or people one-off of Facebook or Instagram. People need to kind of already know you, already be connected, or be connected to someone who knows you. So word of mouth through existing communities was the best way that we found our people. But it is a challenge. The recruitment will be a huge chunk of your time and energy.
I think that idea of finding local organizations, whether it's like your local slow food chapter, or even places like faith-based institutions or things like that, where there's kind of a built-in community that is regularly engaging together, something like that. I see somebody put in the chat something about senior centers, like, you know, thinking about where there are places like that you could tap into a whole group of people. And I also think that referrals, like asking your current people for referrals, like, don't be shy about saying, like, hey, you know how good this is, why don't you tell a bunch of people? And if 5 people sign up with your name, you get a discount or whatever it is. I think that you should go ahead and use what you already have too.
Yep, excellent point, Willow. Word of mouth is definitely, the data shows word of mouth, and the referrals is definitely the top way folks get new members. So I'm going to take a minute. It's sounding like everybody's wanting resources, and we do have we have Penny Leff here from UC Syrup, who I do want to give her 1 second to share about an upcoming webinar series that she has going on. I'm going to share my screen so that you can show your flyer. Sorry.
Well, thank you, Michelle. And I'll start while Michelle's doing that. Thanks to all of the speakers today for excellent advice and sharing your great work. I'm Penny Leff. I'm Agritourism Coordinator with the UC Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education Program, or UC SAREP. And I'm here today to let you know that in addition to being part of the California Small Farm Conference, this webinar is part of a series of webinars for farmers and ranchers, including urban farmers, of course, that UC SAREP is organizing in partnership with CAF and others. And the series is called Agritourism and Direct Sales, Best Practices in COVID Times and Beyond. You can learn more, you can see the full schedule, and let me post this in the chat, or can you post the link in the chat?
I just did, Penny.
Thank you very much. So you can learn more, see the full schedule, and register for individual free webinars at the link on your screen or in the chat. And the webinars feature farmers and other experts sharing their experience on farm stands, U-Pick operations, visitors interacting with animals on the farm, online sales, farm-based education programs, and a whole lot more. And we hope you can check out the series and register for the ones that interest you. So that's my little 2 cents. And back to you, Michelle. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Penny. So I think we're coming to time. I did want to, again, thank the panelists, thank our sponsors, thank you all for being here. This has been a great Q&A. I appreciate all the participation. Here's a couple things. You can subscribe to CAF's email list. Here's a link on our website to keep on top of topics like this. Evan's posting our last poll. That's great. There'll be an evaluation coming out, so we would love your feedback as well. And there's lots of other conference workshops this week, so please join us for other ones. And if you would consider making a donation to keep this conference going, we would love that. That's on their conference schedule page. And I believe that's it.
We'll continue to host workshops and educational opportunities through CAF. So stay tuned. This is just one of many.
Thank you.
Big thanks to our panelists today.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.